The only other thing that I want to add to what you just said is right now it's low-hanging fruit, because anybody that's on anything below 8.5, really there's a true difference in, you know, anything below 8.5 and 8.5 and above, and that's going to give you the ability to put all the stuff on one or two boxes and give you the ability to have true disaster recovery in your collaboration.
Well, so two things. One, with the when you talk about drag along, I think what's also important is drag along sounds exciting for the initial sale, but what it really does is it buys a lot of return business, because you've now invested yourself with that customer more than just, I sold these people a phone system, they call me back on a phone system. I sold them phones, I sold them switching, I sold them routing, I sold them virtualization, networking, I got all of this stuff, and they then think of you as their primary partner. Everybody else becomes peripheral rather than you selling the peripheral product.
Not only that, but there's so many add-ons to it too.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the complexity of it, there's the fact that it's voice, there's the fact that it's virtualization, there's the fact that it's servers. So now now everything's on one box. And although they might have, you know, disaster recovery in multiple places, all their eggs are kind of in one basket. So it's more important to sell monitoring. It's more important to sell managed services. It's more important to sell all these
wrong. I don't expect you guys to become a bunch of engineers. I don't expect you. It's like I expect my team to be able to stand up there and give a 10-minute whiteboard on UC, on UCS. And specifically what other areas you guys play in. And we're going to try and put one up here together, and I'm going to let you kind of help build it, right, based on what you guys, what else, other areas you guys play in. So that is kind of a table stakes challenge that I'm putting down here, is that will help get you in the door, help you get to that first meeting, help you get to the second meeting, it'll help you engage our team where necessary. I mean, this is kind of the launching point, right? Either you want to learn this stuff and be that 1% and be able to apply all this other stuff, because this stuff matters once you're doing all the other things well, right? Once you're doing the demo well, once you're pricing it, once you're registering the deal, once you're getting into the opportunity, right?
Well, the other question I had was, this was associated with the pitch, was so profiles for the servers. Do you see that as part of the pitch that is a, you know, well, that's a really gotta have, you gotta really put that in there, or is it becoming one of those, yeah, it's neat and all, but people really aren't, that's not why people are buying it.
It's the other way around. I think the profiles, the architectural design is what draws people in. That's the sexy, that's the sizzle, that's the flash. When they discover profiles, that's when the freaking light bulb goes off.
Just because
Is everybody in the room know?
No.
We're moving in my profiles.
And that's the hardest part to diagram.
It is, right? It is. But that's not just because, again, I did it, I built on to me it was one of the first things I went, can do what? Okay, that's awesome. But for a non-technical person, it's meaningless. But as salespeople, we need to understand it. So.
Scott, take 2 minutes and share with the room.
You want me to? Okay. So, I mean, it's really a simple technology behind it when it comes to what it does. Now, how they do it, well, that's the cool part. So, you know, the important thing about servers, and if you think of standalone servers, when I have an application installed on it, even if it's just Windows, it knows a lot about that hardware itself. So it knows maybe what the processor ID is. It maybe knows something about the network card. It knows that this video card's in there and so forth. So one of the things VMware did for us is it tried to kind of hide some of that stuff and say, I'm going to send generic information up to the operating system so that I can run a bunch of different boxes on this same piece of hardware. Okay? So that was one of the cool things that VMware, that was one of the challenges VMware had, because they basically had to make each box think, I'm completely unique, this is still me on my own standalone environment. Well, what Cisco did with profiles is that UCS manager, the manager that actually manages these blades, is able to take each individual blade and store all that critical, unique information, processor ID, MAC address, a bunch of other things associated specifically with that server, and store it up in, just like you would store any type of configuration. And that's unique because if I had a server die, okay, great, HP, I call them up and I go, hey, my server died. And they go, here's a new one. And I go, great, I put my hard drives in and it's like, I get errors popping up. It says, oh, I don't recognize this process. Oh, you got a different video card now and it's getting, all these new things come in. So I've got to deal with all that. I've also got to get this stuff back on here. And then I'm like, oh, I forgot. Oh, that server didn't like to talk to the network. I had a special setting that I had in the hardware and all that stuff. Okay, so end of that conversation, there's a lot of uniqueness there that was important. Cisco took that and says, no problem, I'm going to take all those unique qualities, I'm just going to let you store them. So my blade dies, I pull my blade out, I get my new blade from Cisco, I put it in, and I go in here and I go, let's see, that was blade profile 2, push it back down. It's exactly the same blade as it was, the settings are the same way, it's exactly back where it was. And the other good thing is you know what, I really need another server doing exactly the same thing. I already got my tweaks just right. I want to send that profile to blade 2. And I want to just change the unique things that have to be unique to unique, but I'm going to make all those settings go there. So what I'm actually able to do is store all of the uniqueness, all of the pain point. And for us, I mean, the salespeople, we were going to go, well, that sounds kind of neat. You say that to an IT guy who's had to rebuild a server, he immediately will go, oh, I know what you mean. That is such a pain. They will very quickly say, oh, that is a really cool technology. And it's a time saver. It's a huge barrier trying to get the equipment back up once you have it. I got all my new stuff and I got my backup. I've got to get it back together.
So this falls under we're making it easier to manage and recovery if something burns. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah. Cisco on Cisco, that same thing. We're using UCS to partition the server 6 weeks before this. Now it's 6 hours. So just you talk to anybody that has dealt with it on our side. That's a huge, Cisco on Cisco, 6 weeks to 6 hours to get a server back up, back in the rack going. I mean, unbelievable. So
Typical time to bring a server from out of the cardboard up and running could be 48 to 72 hours. Well, if you have a mission critical application that goes down, if I can bring it back up in 5 minutes, what does that bring back to the partner, to the customer, right? That's really what the profile
sounds cool.
Capabilities
The best
bring.
way to do it, guys, find a UCS opportunity, engage Amy and the team, and sit through the demo. Just pay attention. You'll see it. You'll learn it. Whether you go to Atlanta or do it via WebEx, I mean, yeah.
And here's the other thing I was going to throw at you guys real quick on the UCS. UCS will become very stealth-like in your customers' environments because you're going to start to see more and more Cisco applications roll out as a virtual application that will reside in a Cisco UCS. Real world example you'll hear at 1st of February is wireless LAN controllers are going to move to a VM and
So they don't need a separate unit.
So instead of having this separate box, if I got UCS sitting there and a blade chassis, I grab blade number 4 and bam, that goes my wireless controller. You're going to start to see more of a stealth approach to the technology because, oh, you already got it there? Fine. It's just a license and application.
When I read the stuff about UCS and UCE and all that, I couldn't help but think that there's, and I don't know how valuable you guys have found it with the clients, but it seems like we're making the servers, the reduced number of them. This is like orange juice going to concentrate.
Significant.
That now I've got, where I had 15 servers and they were all probably running at 40% efficiency or max capacity, whatever you want to call it. That when you put them into the blade servers or the pizza boxes, whatever we're doing with UCS, that makes that blade or that group of blades 85% efficient, and that means something to the customers. How? Other than it gives them, they know they've spent their money well because they're getting max capacity.
It costs a lot of money to power and to cool those boxes, to cable those boxes, to buy connectivity for those boxes,
and manage it.
Well,
You take this room right here, and hang racks in here for individual servers. We could hang probably, 50 servers in this room? All of a sudden, you take 50 servers down to 3 chassis. 3 chassis that sit in one rack back in this room. It's a huge consolidation of real estate, power for both powering up the device and cooling the device.
And don't we have or won't the client have visibility of this one's, we're getting to 90% capacity?
Oh, they have.
You know,
more
in
tools
terms
than
of
they-
managing that so they can.
Yeah,
send
single
more to
pane of
another
glass.
box?
Yeah.
Well, see, and again, what this, talking about drag, so Cisco didn't invent virtualization in any way, shape, or form. What they did was, they took something that was already selling in the market, which is virtualization, which has all these fantastic reasons to go to it, for heating, for cooling, for space, for better utilization, and so forth. And what they did was they built purpose-built boxes that that people could now take the most advantage of a technology that was already hot and put it on there. And oh, by the way, we're going to have all these other great reasons why, if you virtualize on our hardware, now when you, like he said, when you add that second chassis, it's just part of the environment. It's not its own, oh great, now I have to start all over again.
Right.
And then they've added profiles, and they've added, don't think it's not that important, the extra wires. I mean, the wires are a problem. And when I have to have one wire go up, and that's 10 gig, while most people are sitting there, and nowadays you'll see it, a server will have 4, 5, 1 gig connections in. Look, I can combine that down to 1, and it's going to be twice as fast. And by the way, because I've consolidated through virtualization and through hardware, if you need access to more than that, it's available, and it's going to share that stuff.
Guys, we could spend
Yeah.
an entirely another day on UCS and the architectural relevance of it and profiles. I'll come back to find someone that's replacing servers in the next 6 months. Find some. Servers are on a year refresh, right? They refresh every 3 years, third to third to third. Or it's a wholesale kicker. Find someone that's replacing servers. Get Amy, David, and our resources involved, and sit through a demo. Go to Atlanta, go to RTP, go to sales office, we have the box, sit through the emulator, and you'll be blown away. For the purpose of today, what I want you to be able to walk out of here with is an understanding on where UCS plays into everything else you do. So pick a point in the network that you feel comfortable with. An access point, switch, router, phone, I don't care. Pick a spot that you feel comfortable with and start to build it. So in the Cisco world, we typically always start with a switch, right? It's what we grew up selling, right? 90% of our business is routing and switching. That switch connects to what? A router. That router is how I get to my WAN, my internet. Plugging into that switch are PCs. Anybody disagree with that so far? Is that beyond anybody's competence level? Okay. Scott did a great job discussing the way telephony used to work, right? You have a couple different options here. Drawing a PBX, breaking the pieces out, and literally showing it collapse into our solution is a great visual representation to show how we no longer need voice, video, and data networks, and voice, video, and data administrators, and voice, video, and data vendors. It all collapses together. You guys can do this a number of different ways. For the sake of today, I'll kind of walk through that. So to Scott's point, this is your data network, right? This is your video network. That's supposed to be a TV, sitting on its own network. And this is your PBX, your phone network. It has what's called a trunk shelf, which goes out to the public switch telephone network, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, what have you. It has a station shelf. That is how your phones connect. And it has a CPU. If you call control, your voicemail, it makes everything work. When you press 1, it goes boop, right? That's what your CPU does. 3 disparate, distinct networks. What Cisco did is we said, you know what? We need to consolidate. We need to optimize. We need to compress these together. So these phones plug into station shelves. Well, why don't we allow these phones to plug into our switches, and we'll power them without a power brick by literally sticking them straight into the switch and routing voice over that switch.